Some crimes don't get solved, some vanish from headlines entirely, and some are so deeply strange that even the FBI, full task forces, and decades of investigation couldn't crack them. These aren't cases that simply ran out of leads. They're cases where evidence disappeared, witnesses contradicted each other, and the truth seems intentionally buried. Today, we're counting down 5 of the most disturbing unsolved cases from U.S. history, starting from number 5 and ending at the most chilling one of all. Let's get into it. Case 5. The Zodiac Killer, America's most taunting serial killer. Between the late 1960s and early 1970s, a serial killer operating in Northern California sent encrypted letters to police and newspapers, mocking investigators and daring them to catch him. He called himself the Zodiac. But he claimed responsibility for 37 murders, though only 5 were officially confirmed. What made this case so disturbing wasn't just the killings, it was the psychological game he played with law enforcement and the public. He sent coded ciphers, one of which took more than 50 years to decode. When the so-called 340 cipher was finally cracked in 2020 by a team of amateur codebreakers, it contained no name and no clear location, just more taunting. Despite dozens of suspects investigated over the decades, not a single person was ever charged. At some point, the Zodiac simply stopped sending letters and stopped communicating altogether. Nobody knows why. Did he die? Was he imprisoned for something unrelated? Did he just stop? The case remains officially open. Yet his identity is still one of the most debated unsolved mysteries in American criminal history. Case 4. The Beaumont Children, 3 kids who vanished in broad daylight. On January 26, 1966, 3 siblings from Adelaide, Australia, Jane, 9, Arna, 7, and Grant Beaumont, 4, left their home for what was meant to be a short trip to nearby Glenelg Beach. They were last seen on that Australia Day holiday interacting with an unidentified tall man near the beach area. Witnesses recalled that the children appeared calm and comfortable in his presence, suggesting he may have used persuasion or familiarity to gain their trust. After that sighting, the children vanished and were never seen again. Despite extensive searches across the beach, surrounding suburbs, and later nationwide investigations, no confirmed trace of them was ever found. The case quickly became one of Australia's most infamous missing person mysteries. Over the decades, numerous leads emerged. Police followed thousands of tips, investigated multiple suspects, and conducted several searches of properties believed to be linked to possible perpetrators. In some instances, excavation work was carried out, but no conclusive evidence was recovered. The case also attracted public attention from amateur investigators and self-proclaimed psychics, none of whom provided verifiable breakthroughs. The disappearance of the Beaumont children had a lasting impact on public awareness and child safety practices in Australia and influenced missing children response systems more broadly. Despite ongoing interest and periodic reviews of the evidence, the case remains unsolved. But the fate of Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont is still unknown, leaving their disappearance one of the most enduring mysteries in Australian criminal history. Case 3. The West Memphis 3 and the Real Killer, Nobody Found. In May 1993, 3 8-year-old boys were found brutally murdered in a drainage ditch in West Memphis, Arkansas. 3 teenagers, Damian Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miskelly Jr., were arrested and convicted, largely on the basis of a coerced confession and widespread moral panic about supposed satanic rituals. They became known as the West Memphis 3. For nearly 2 decades, legal experts, advocates, and celebrities fought for their release, arguing the real killer was never pursued. In 2011, all 3 were freed using an Alford plea, maintaining their innocence while acknowledging the state technically had enough to convict them. The actual killer of those 3 children was never identified and never charged. Forensic experts later argued bite mark evidence pointed towards someone connected to one of the victims' families, but no arrest ever followed. 3 children were murdered. 3 men likely spent decades behind bars for something they didn't do. And the real killer almost certainly walked free. This case is not just unsolved. It's one of the most documented failures of the American justice system ever recorded. Case 2. D.B. Cooper, the hijacker who jumped into thin air. On November 24, 1971, a man using the alias Dan Cooper hijacked Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, later widely misreported in the media as D.B. Cooper. He was described as a calm, middle-aged man who purchased a one-way ticket from Portland to Seattle. Once the aircraft was airborne, he handed a note to a flight attendant claiming he had a bomb, then revealed what appeared to be explosive devices and demanded $200,000 in cash along with parachutes. After landing in Seattle, passengers were released and the ransom was delivered. Cooper then ordered the plane to take off again, flying toward Mexico City at low altitude and slow speed. Somewhere over the rugged terrain of the Pacific Northwest, likely between Seattle and Reno, he lowered the rear stairs and parachuted into the night with the money. What happened after that remains unknown. Despite one of the longest and most intensive investigations in FBI history, Cooper was never conclusively identified. In 1980, a portion of deteriorated ransom money was discovered along the banks of the Columbia River, but no additional physical evidence linked directly to him or confirmed his fate. Over the decades, numerous suspects were proposed, but none were proven. The FBI officially suspended active investigation in 2016, though the case remains open in a technical sense. Most experts believe Cooper likely did not survive the jump due to weather, terrain, and lack of skydiving experience, but no definitive evidence has ever confirmed his death or identity. As a result, the case remains one of the most enduring mysteries in aviation history. Case 1. The Black Dahlia, a murder so brutal it still has no answer. On the morning of January 15, 1947, a woman walking in a Los Angeles neighborhood spotted what she first thought was a store mannequin lying in a vacant lot. It was the body of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, completely severed at the waist, entirely drained of blood, and posed with horrifying precision. Her face had been slashed from the corners of the mouth toward her ears. There was no blood at the scene, meaning she had been killed somewhere else and then carefully transported and arranged. The killer had clear anatomical knowledge and had meticulously cleaned the body before placing it. This was not a crime of passion. It was deliberate, controlled, and deeply calculated. Elizabeth Short, who became known in the press as the Black Dahlia, had come to Los Angeles hoping to work in film. The LAPD received hundreds of tips and investigated dozens of suspects over years. Several individuals even confessed, but every single confession turned out to be false. The real killer was never identified. More than 75 years later, the Black Dahlia murder remains one of the most studied and most disturbing unsolved murders in American history. Suspects have been named in books and documentaries. Not one person has ever been charged. Whoever killed Elizabeth Short walked away completely free. These 5 cases share one devastating thing. They all ended without justice. Families were left with no answers. Investigators spent entire careers chasing ghosts. And in at least some of these cases, the people responsible likely lived out full, quiet lives without ever seeing the inside of a courtroom. That is the part that should disturb you the most. Not just the crimes themselves, but the silence and the failure that followed. If you found this video worthwhile, subscribe because we dig into cases like these regularly. Drop a comment. Which one of these do you think will ever actually be solved? I'll see you in the next video.